भत्ता या सर्विस। अस्सलाम वालेकुम नाज़रीन, मैं हूं तज़मीन जावेद और यह है खबर से तज्जिए तक। फिर से इंटरनेशनल इशू, और क्योंकि इंटरनेशनल इशू लाना चाहिए और आपके सामने दुनिया भर के अंदर जो चेंजेस आ रही हैं। गो के कल एक आवाज़ उठी कि बाहर के हवाले से आप लोग ज़्यादा फिक्र मत करें, अपने मुल्क के अंदरूनी मामला पे फिक्र करें। ये किसने कहा है वो सेकंड सेगमेंट में मैं लेके आऊँगा कि बहरहाल इंटरनेशनल इशू इसलिए भी इंपॉर्टेंट है, बैनुल-अक़वामी मौज़ू इसलिए इंपॉर्टेंट है, हमारी सबकी ज़िंदगियाँ जुड़ी हुई है। वो ये कि भत्ता या सर्विस का जो मैंने आज इंट्रो रखा या वन लाइनर रखा है, जो गालिबन हमारे प्रोग्राम का ट्रेडमार्क बन चुका है, वो ये कि कल ट्रम्प साहब ने ही अनाउंस्ड दैट ही वुड बी इम्पोजिंग 20% of fee for the vessels to pass through the Strait of Hormuz, for the reason because he believes that amount of money would be used for the reimbursement. आज की खबर यह है कि उन्होंने कहा है कि नहीं, अब 20% नहीं, हम ये करते हैं कि जो खलीजी ममालिक हैं वो ऐसा जो है वो ट्रेड करें, तिजारत करें, बहुत सारी इन्वेस्टमेंट करें। अभी इनका बयान आया उनके बकौल, when he announced this decision of imposing 20% of fee charges, many calls were made apparently from the Gulf nations, and they asked for to consider this decision, to reconsider this decision, and Trump announced today that they pledged to invest so much money in the United States of America, and billions of dollars would be coming in the United States of America. So Donald Trump साहब ने कल ही अनाउंस दैट ही वुड बी इम्पोजिंग द नेवल ब्लॉकेट, उन्होंने वो लगा दिया है। अब बनाए हुर्मुज के अंदर नहरी जो बहरी नाकाबंदी है वो लगा चुके हैं, और उन्होंने कहा है कि जो भी जहाज ईरानी बंदरगाह से आएगा उसको हम नहीं आने देंगे, अलबत्ता जो वहां से नहीं आएगा उसको हम वहां से गुजरने देंगे, लेकिन दैट देयर वुड बी एन इंस्पेक्शन। और साथ साथ मशरक़ वस्ता के अंदर जो है ईरान की तरफ से जो रिटेलिएशन आ रहा है, ये अमरीकी अड्डों पे जो है हमले किए जा रहे हैं। ईरान ये कह रहा है कि अमरीका की तरफ से कुछ सिविलियन इंफ्रास्ट्रक्चर के आसपास उनके कुछ प्रोजेक्टाइल्स जो है एक्सप्लोड हुए हैं। ईरान भी स्ट्राइक बैक करता है उर्दून के अंदर, कुवैत के अंदर, बहरीन के अंदर अमरीकी अड्डों पे है। और कल की खबर ये थी कि हौसी वाला मामला और सऊदी अरेबिया वाला मामला फिर से गर्म हो गया है, और इल्जाम ये लगाया गया कि हौसियों ने, जिसकी आज मजम्मत की है वज़ीर आज़म शहबाज शरीफ, द प्राइम मिनिस्टर ऑफ पाकिस्तान हैज कंडेम्ड द अटैक्स ऑन सऊदी अरेबिया फ्रॉम द हौसीज, एंड से कि हमारी जो है तमाम हमदर्दियां जो है, सॉलिडारिटी जो है, जो इज़हार यकजहती है, वो बिल्कुल हौसियों सऊदी अरेबिया के साथ है, और हम सऊदी अरेबिया के साथ खड़े हुए हैं। इस वक्त जब मैं आपसे गुफ्तगू कर रहा हूँ, फील्ड मार्शल आसिम मुनीर साहब जो वो टर्काई में मौजूद हैं, और एंड ही मेट द टर्किश प्रेसिडेंट Recep Tayyip Erdogan. So today we are going to discuss on this very important topic, like we always do, and the international relations, and the subject has become the cornerstone of our program. Joining us is Zahra Lada. She is a geopolitical analyst and she has an expertise on Middle Eastern affairs. Thank you, Zahra, for joining us. My first question to you would be very straight. Where the things are going, and are we going to see more problems in the coming days, or we are going to see things to get back to normal, or to the time when the MOU was signed between the US and Iran?
Thank you very much for having me. Now, it doesn't seem that tensions in the Strait of Hormuz are likely to abate in the coming days. And this is because both sides are unclear on what implementation of the MOU means, not just on this point, but in wider points in the Memorandum of Understanding that was signed nearly a month ago. Now, even if tensions do abate and both sides, with the help of mediators from the region, are able to see eye to eye and work out a plan going forward, there are other parts of the MOU that are going to require significant debate and significant compromise to achieve an outcome that's good for everyone. And increasingly, the problem is that Washington and Tehran have different understandings about how this MOU is to be implemented. Washington seems to believe it struck a grand bargain of some sort with Iran, where it can negotiate its nuclear file, its control over the Strait of Hormuz, and separately, in Lebanon and in Iraq, and possibly even in Yemen, it's using non-state actors to achieve its strategic objectives. While Iran sees this fundamentally as unconditional surrender, it will be giving up its leverage in the Straits, in proxy arenas, and also potentially on its nuclear file. So even if tensions do abate in the coming days, we are likely to run into the same roadblocks, which is the US.
I agree with you, because I believe the confidence is not going to be the same, because the confidence was never the same between the US and Iran from before 20th of Feb, and now the things have become more worsened. But we see when there are the talks of further escalation, there also a talk of of parleys and negotiation, and the possibility is not being ruled out by the people who are into this process. Yes, Donald Trump is giving statements which gives the impression that he does not want, he is not looking serious enough to have more talks with Iran, and Iran is also looking very defined in terms of that they would not be even talking to the United States of America in the future. But there is also a hope that if something can happen, then there's a possibility for these two parties to sit together. You see any possibility of that in coming days or so?
Absolutely, there is always a possibility of this, because the alternative is all-out war, which neither Washington or Tehran really want. Washington can't really afford to put that bill, and Tehran has limits on how long it can kind of absorb that impact from the US. So of course there remains a possibility for negotiations, but the issue is tensions have flared up on the most contentious issue in the MOU, which is the Strait of Hormuz. So if mediators can come to a temporary agreement or a temporary understanding on what control of that strategic waterway looks like in the coming days, yes, we can have resume negotiations, but that seems difficult on present indication.
Yes, the tensions have flared up, as you have mentioned, and now we see the more regional countries in the Middle East, especially when we saw that last day there was an escalation, yesterday was an escalation between the Saudi Arabia and the Houthis, and the Saudi-backed government and the Saudis are on the same page, and the Houthis also attacked the Saudi Arabia, and Pakistan condemned the Houthi action. Pakistan has always expressed its unwavering support for Saudi Arabia. How, when the Saudi Arabia is being attacked, and when there's so many other countries in the Middle East are getting you can say that they're the byproduct of this conflict. They're not involved directly. There's also a perception, there are certain allegations even which points out that yes, they may be also backing the US, but these are not confirmed reports. So how, when all these players and most of them, one of them, I think two of them are the mediators, like Oman and Qatar. They're also being, the US base is situated, they're also being attacked there. So how you see the mediation process to resume in the coming days?
The regional mediators have little choice except to push the diplomacy unless they're prepared for a long-term war in the region, which they are not. The developments that we saw in Yemen just showed how quickly other arenas can be opened, and this is not something that Gulf states want. It undermines their development objectives, it undermines stability in the region, and they've been very clear that they'd like to avoid that outcome if at all possible. Iran is a permanent member of the region. Iran isn't going anywhere, and Gulf states understand this, which is why there is still this push for mediation. But the bigger issue right now is that this US-Iran file is increasingly becoming entangled in regional files in Yemen, in Lebanon, and Iraq, and that only complicates the route to a proper and lasting agreement between these two states.
Interesting. Zara, can you also define that what now the Strait of Hormuz has become, I think, the trump card for Iran, and this, I think this is being realized by the United States of America, that Iran is playing its card and they want to protect this waterway, which is disputed. Some say that's an international waterway, but Iran and Oman say that we jointly control this Strait of Hormuz. Now the United States of America has imposed a naval blockade, and yesterday Trump was seeking 20% fee charges, and now he backtracked it, and now he said that we are going to have certain deals with the Gulf countries. How can the Strait of Hormuz, the issue in the Strait of Hormuz can be resolved? Is there any common ground that can be achieved between the United States of America and Iran?
Iran could plausibly allow for some international oversight over the Strait of Hormuz if it believes it can preserve strategic leverage in other arenas. The problem for Tehran right now, and we've seen that today with Iranian parliamentarians, a good number of them saying they want the MOU to be over, is that Iran fundamentally believes it's being asked to relinquish all its strategic leverage ahead of talks. Now, if Iran can retain some leverage, either on the nuclear file, either through its armed groups in Lebanon, Iraq, and also in Yemen, there may be space for some sort of agreement in the Strait of Hormuz. But under these current conditions, where Iran is being given very little in return for relinquishing a lot, agreement may remain elusive.
The agreement may remain elusive. And then one more thing, how do you see the role of Pakistan in this entire process? Yes, the Oman and the Qatar are the mediators, and they have always facilitated the talks between the Iran and the US. And Pakistan also played its role, and the Islamabad memorandum is the agreement which is acknowledged by both the parties. But I would like to ask you, that how can Pakistan play its role further in diffusing this tension, because both Iran and the US, they post their confidence on Pakistani leadership.
Absolutely, and I think what Pakistan has done very, very well in these negotiations is stepped in when regional mediators felt they were no longer able to fulfill those commitments. Qatar was unwilling at one point to mediate, even though it's historically had that role, while it was under attack from Iran. So Pakistan's role here has been instrumental because it's allowed the negotiations to continue while regional states kind of deal with the issues that have been caused by Iranian attacks on them. So Pakistan has a key role in ensuring that further negotiations continue at a bilateral level and also between mediators and the US.
Exactly. And one more thing, how do you see, there's also a perception that the current Iranian leadership, especially who are considered to be moderates and who are considered to be hardliners, they are not on the same page. Is it a true reading of the situation in Iran? And from the hardliners, I mean the IRGC, which recently the United Kingdom has sanctioned them, has outlawed them in the country. So do you agree with my reading that IRGC and the Iranian government are on the same page when it comes to dealing with the strikes that are being conducted in the Gulf countries, but on the American basis, or you see them having difference of opinion, which is getting much more apparent and laid barren before every one of us?
I mean, there's definitely communication between the IRGC and the presidential branch and the legislative branch, and that is very much how the country is being run right now. And I think the bigger question is whether or not there are divisions, but whether or not Iran as a country sees any benefit to these negotiations. It's unlikely that the difference of opinion, if there is such a difference of opinion, is playing out in international affairs. I think what we're increasingly seeing, as highlighted by 180 Iranian parliamentarians today saying they want an end to the MOU, is that Iran increasingly believes its leverage is being eroded within this framework and will have nothing left to bring to negotiations. So that is the more concerning point from my perspective, that Iran increasingly believes it doesn't have a reason to negotiate if the situation continues the way it has been over the last couple of days.
Zara, you must have read the report today published in New York Times, and most people in our part of the country, they do not believe in the Western media. The New York Times is claiming that former Iranian President Ahmadinejad was having certain engagements with Mossad, the Israeli agency, and they were trying to facilitate him when the Americans and the Israelis were thinking for a regime change. Do you agree with the report of the New York Times, or is there something else, or they have exaggerated the meetings? Because this is quite normal for a country, for an official or for the former official to meet the officials of an hostile country to try to resolve the conflict. But do you agree with the New York Times report, which is claiming that Ahmadinejad was backed by Israel and the United States of America after the regime change would have happened?
I mean, it seems very likely that there was some sort of Mossad outreach to some Iranian officials, at least during the conflict. And you can really see that with how the initial stages of this conflict played out. I mean, even before we got to the war, we were talking about protesters, or Donald Trump, to be precise, was talking about protesters taking control of security institutions, taking control of the government. And it does seem that there was some sort of plan underneath that to force regime change in the country. And again, the more important point is that did not happen. There was a clear succession plan, and the country has managed to navigate a very turbulent, tumultuous period with a relative degree of success. And the question now isn't, did Mossad want regime change in Iran, or did the US want regime change in Iran? It seems likely that the question was yes at one point in time. But now the question is, can the US, can Israel make some sort of agreement with the new leadership in Tehran? And what would that look like for the security architecture in the region?
Interesting, very interesting analysis. We would like to expand this discussion further. Pakistan is also is a neighboring country with Iran, and you must be aware that we are having certain we are confronting terrorism, and the scourge of terrorism is also affecting Pakistan. And obviously, Pakistan has has an arch rival by the name of India, and India is not looking very very happy with the developments that Pakistan achieved in the recent days when it came to when it tried to broker the peace between Iran and the US, and it did so, and it eventually the MOU was signed. But I believe that New Delhi, and you also know there's a New Delhi and Islamabad are not on the same page on so many things, especially after Modi. And there's a scourge of terrorism in Pakistan. The reports are coming from Balochistan and Khyber Pakhtunkhwa. You see that this is an internal Pakistani issue, or there are certain things which most of the external factors are trying to exert on Pakistan through Tehreek-e-Taliban Pakistan and through Afghanistan, or this to you looks like an internal issue of Pakistan?
The question is, are recent developments inside Pakistan a product of external actors?
I mean, I'm just saying that there are reports that Balochistan and Khyber Pakhtunkhwa are facing terrorism, and we are at the forefront facing terrorism. But the question to you is, you see this as an internal matter of Pakistan, or you see that Pakistan always accuse India of sponsoring terror through Afghanistan, and after so many achievements Pakistan made in diplomatic affairs. So you find any possibility that Pakistan may be more targeted, and it will be more targeted from the proxies supported by India?
I mean, it's entirely possible that Pakistan's recent success in international stage shapes its relationships with other countries. I would leave an expert on Pakistani affairs to answer that question further.
Okay, fine. Okay, we would like to. My last question to you is that in the recent standoff between the US and the Iran, we saw that Israel was also the part, and Iran also attacked the Israeli bases or Israeli installations. But now we do not see any such attacks from Iran on Israel. You find any reason on that?
Yeah, of course. I mean, there's still an indication that both sides want to de-escalate, and adding Israel into the mix would be a significant escalation. It's been previously very, very difficult to get them to agree to ceasefires, both with Iran and also in the wider region. So an Israeli entry into this flare-up, for want of a better word, would likely escalate tensions very significantly and make it hard to come back to the negotiating table. Tel Aviv did put out a statement today saying if Iran does attack them, they will respond in kind. But there's been no apparent push for aggression in Tel Aviv. And if we're looking for de-escalation, it's better that that stays that way.
And last question, will the truce in Lebanon, would it hold, or would you see it also breaking in the coming days?
The issue in Lebanon is that there are two parallel tracks occurring right now, from Iran's perspective at least. There's the call for the end of all conflicts in the region, including Lebanon, which is outlined in the MOU, and a parallel track of negotiation between Lebanon and Israel, which calls for the disarmament of Hezbollah. Now, under these conditions, there's a very good chance that that truce does unravel, likely because Beirut hasn't proven capable in the past of disarming Hezbollah, and Hezbollah itself has rejected these negotiations between Lebanon and Israel. There's potential for flare-up inside Lebanon as well as in the wider region.
And Hezbollah is not agreeing to the demand of disarmament.
Exactly, and is unlikely to do so. And this is not just because of Iran, it's because of the group's own internal objectives and how it sees itself in the Lebanese state. This is quite an interesting time in history where we have another state dictating the internal affairs of one country. Of course, critics of Iran can say the same thing, that they've supported Hezbollah and they've been shaping developments inside Lebanon. But we are in a very unusual kind of circumstance where Tel Aviv is demanding Beirut to disarm a group that is embedded in the political structure of the country.
Thank you, Zara. Thank you, Zara, for giving us your time, and it was a pleasure talking to you. Viewers, we discussed the Middle Eastern affairs with a Middle Eastern expert, Zara Lada, and we asked we asked certain questions that were related to Middle East. I also tried to ask her on Pakistan issue, but she said, and these are the things which we all must appreciate. She said that she is not an expert on the Pakistani affairs. I would try to ask the question that was related to the developments in Pakistan and how the external world is trying to instigate terror in Pakistan. So that question was according to the developments, but she was right to point out that she is not an policy expert on Pakistan, so she cannot comment. These are the things which we all must learn. Jahan cheez aapko aati hai, when you know things, you should be telling, and if you do not know, you can say it, I do not know. This is how the journalism is being done in international media. And this is what I have learned, and I'm learning from these international guests, which whenever they appear on a television, they give what they know, they share what they know, and they do not share anything which you do not know. This is a very simple equation. I think we should all learn from this. इस नुक्ते पर ब्रेक लेते हैं और ब्रेक के बाद सियासी मामलात पर आते हैं.